If the trust is cracked, where do we stand? Who keeps score when the facts land? This is media in the margins. Media in the margins.
Coming up on season 1 of Media in the Margins.
If I was to be arrested or injured or any possible eventuality like that, you want to know that there are people around you who you trust and care for. And I think that you form bonds doing this kind of work that are really close, where you have that enormous level of trust. And sort of like I mentioned before, in some cases, those would be people who I consider to technically be competitors from a business standpoint, but you really don't end up feeling that mentality when you're on the ground there side by side with each other. You do look out for each other. You do help each other. You are ready to call each other's spouses if something goes wrong.
But I also was really seeing the need for big shifts in journalism. And I think it felt really energizing and also just really important to shift from being a daily news to being part of this bigger solution. Like I was just seeing over and over again how our content when I worked in the daily newsroom was not resonating with people in our community, or how there was these gaps and these kind of like, we were out here trying to provide a public service, but that was not what the audience in our community was perceiving.
There's this old-fashioned thing called walking around and talking to people and seeing things. That's really, really, really valuable. Gumshoe journalism, right? Super important. When it comes to travel, obviously, this is easy if you live in somewhere like Spain or France, right? You can get a fast train with a fairly decent ecological footprint, or actually you can do this in the Nordic countries. This is very tough to do if you're in the rural south. It's very tough to do if you're in primitive countries like Canada, the United States, Britain, Australia, especially big countries like the United States and Canada. How do you get around without using air travel? But don't get sucked into the idea that you are super guilty because you're on a plane.
Now I would say I would describe myself more as a storyteller than a journalist. And so as a storyteller, I feel like I am going in with a preconceived notion of how I want my listeners or my viewers to feel, as opposed to a journalist where I'm letting the content speak for itself, if that makes sense.
As you look at yourself as a storyteller, is it more difficult to be a storyteller or to build a business? Independent creator is supported or not supported, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but has there been a shift in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that there are those designers who are totally aware that design is not a job where you could, make big money on. So unfortunately, the times like in the 80s where design was about, being a successful designer and taking cocaine and having big parties, those times are over.
That's a funny story, actually, because it started with Facebook comment sections. So I was scrolling Facebook, and I've done it regularly, and it's always incredibly funny to read the comment sections under news outlets publishing on Facebook, because there's just a bunch of people making statements or rants, and then there are people answer, but just read the paper, just read the article, and you'll understand it. And that made me think, how is the initial presentation on Facebook, how does that correspond with the article? How does that nuance work?